Hey guys, we are going to learn how to do circumference of circles. Okay, circumference is the perimeter of circles. Does that make sense? So perimeter, remember, is the outside of all of your polygons added together, right? Circumference is finding the distance around a circle. So let's write that down. Somewhere on your page, label that circumference is the distance around a circle. So it is the outside of a circle, finding the distance around that, around the outside of the circle. So that's why I say it's the perimeter of circles, because you're finding just the outside of that circle. So we're going to go to the ones that say circumference of circles, the practice problems one. So this side. And we need to find the circumference. So in order to find circumference, okay, we have to figure out the formula. And where do we go to figure out the formula for circumference? Your InSCAS sheet. Everyone go to your InSCAS sheet. Because remember, you don't have to have the formulas memorized. They will always be there. You will always get to use them. So what does it say this formula is? C equals what? Pi d. And what's d stand for? Diameter. Then it says it's equal to what? 2 pi r, and r stands for radius. So that means with circumference and circles, we have a diameter and we have a radius. You use whichever formula you need to use based on the number that they give you. Based on if they give you the diameter, use the diameter formula. If they give you the radius, use the radius formula. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, so before we start solving these problems, let's go back to our page. If you look at the bottom two, we see two circles. Okay, one of them is a line that goes from the center of the circle to the outside. The other goes from the outside of the circle to the other side of the circle, and it passes through the center. One of them is your radius, one of them is your diameter. Talk to your partner about which one you think is which. Go.
This is the radius, and remember, radius is the length to the center to the side, so the diameter is the whole way across.
All right, guys. What are we thinking? The first one, do you think it's the radius or the diameter, everyone?
Radius.
It is the radius. Label that for me. So that first one is your radius, and the second one then has to be the diameter. Radius goes from the center of your circle to the outside, and the diameter goes the whole way, which means radius is what compared to the diameter? It's half of it. So if they tell me the diameter is 9, what would you tell me the radius is? So I want us to write that down. So if the diameter is 9, the radius is 4.5. Does that make sense, everyone? Because you cut 9 in half. Half of 9 is 4.5. If they tell me the radius is 14, what would my diameter be?
28.
How'd you figure that out? You added them together, or you multiplied it by 2. Any questions on the diameter and the radius? Yes, ma'am.
So for the radius,
Well, if they give you the diameter, you cut it in half. So 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. If they give you the radius, and you want to find the diameter, you multiply it by 2. Because the radius is always half of the diameter. So there's if you put two radiuses together, you get the diameter. Like if I were to put a line right here, my blue and black lines together would make my diameter. And if one side is 14, the other side has to be 14, which is why my diameter would be 28.
Oh, okay.
Good question. Bennett.
Couldn't you just if you gotta memorize them eventually, couldn't you just memorize one of them because you know radius is half? And so if you memorize radius, you get the diameter and you just put them in half.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, let's go up to the top, guys. We'll come back down to the bottom ones in just a second. Okay, so first of all, remember, use the formula that you need to use. I just tell you to be careful. Very easy to make a mistake. So what did they give me in problem number 1? They gave you a 2-inch diameter, which means I should use what formula? What formula should I use for circumference? Pi times d, pi times diameter. Okay, now here's the deal. Never this year, and probably next year, I can't remember when you guys start, but don't ever push the pi button unless someone tells you to. Is that understood? Mm-hmm. This year, you are going to always use just 3.14. Is that understood? Mm-hmm. So that means that this is going to be equal, because I'm going to plug in my numbers, it's going to be equal to 3.14 times my diameter. What's my diameter? And then this is where you guys can use your calculator to do the math for you. Write down the answer. What did we get, everyone? 6.28. And then we got to label it. 6.28 what? Inches. Now, is this one inches or is this one inches squared? Inches. Why? Because it's like perimeter. And do we use squared on perimeter? No. So we don't use squared on circumference. When we do area of circles, do you think we're going to square it? Because it's area, right, guys? Yeah. All right. Number 2. What do they give us on number 2? They give us the what? Radius. The radius. So that means I'm going to use the formula C equals 2 pi r. Because that is the formula when given the radius. So if you're given diameter, use the diameter formula. When you're given the radius, use the radius formula. Then you plug in your numbers. You're doing 2 times 3.14, because remember we're using 3.14 for pi. And then I'm multiplying it by my radius. And what's the radius, everyone? 8. And then you do your math on the calculator. Write down your answer. What did we get, everyone? 50.24 what? Questions? Okay, number 3. What did they give us on number 3? So I'm going to use what formula? C equals what? Pi d, pi times diameter. Because it gave me the diameter, use the diameter formula. And then that equals, pi is 3.14, so 3.14 times what? 3. What do we get, you guys? 9.42 what? Okay. Now on 1 and 2, I said both the diameter and the radius for both of them, right, guys? So you can do whichever formula you want. My suggestion is I would just use the C equals pi times diameter, because we already know it, right, guys? So for this one, I would do C equals pi times diameter, which is 3.14, and what's my diameter? 28. So I would do 3.14 times 28. What is 3.14 times 28, you guys? 87.92 inches. And then number 2, I'd also just use the diameter because it's there for us. So C equals pi times diameter, which is 3.14 times what, you guys? 9. Because 9 is the diameter, 4.5 is the radius. What's that equal, everyone? So yeah. Because I already knew what the diameter was. I could have. And I could have done 2 times pi times the radius, which still would have been 2 times 3.14 times 14, not 28.
Okay, so on the radius, you never really have to do the radius formula because you most likely never done it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the radius, doing 2 times pi times the radius is you doing 2 times the radius. So 2 times the radius is getting your diameter. So that's why the 2 formulas are exactly the same.
Okay.
Yep, that's why the 2 is there with the radius, because you got to multiply the radius by 2 to get your diameter. So that's why you can use either formula. You just have to be really careful on what number you plug in for the radius / the diameter, depending on what you're talking about. So yeah, I'm not picky on which problem or which formula you use, as long as you are using it correctly. Sound good, guys? Mm-hmm. Questions? Okay, you and your partner very quickly are going to do numbers 1 through 5 on the real world side. Go. All right, guys, here we go. Number 1. Problem 1. 2. What'd you get?
I got, do you want me to say the formula?
Nope, just the answer.
50.24.
Very nicely done. You guys should have told me 50.24 for the first one. 8. What did you get for number 2? 69.08 inches. Very nicely done. 3. What did you get for 3? Nope, not here. 5. What did you get for 3?
43.96 inches.
Very nicely done. 43.96 inches. 4. What'd you get for 4?
4, I got 131.88.
Very nicely done. 131.88 feet. And the last one, 11. What did you get?
43.16 feet.
Do I have any questions, you guys? All right.